welcome to this edition of A Conversation with a New Year. And joining us in the studio today is our friend Helena DeSilva Hughes is joining us, the president of the Immigrants Assistance Center. And it's obviously appropriate with this time of year right now and a new administration in Washington. You are flooded right now, I would say, with questions and visitors and everything right now. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but you are... I mean, you were busy before the last time you were here, but it's got to be a difficult time right now for you and the staff.
Yeah, it is very difficult. It's very difficult because now, you know, people are just very anxious about what is going to happen, right? During the elections, you know, President Trump kept talking about, during his elections, kept talking about mass deportations, mass deportations. So throughout this campaign, that's something he always talked about, right?
That's his bread and butter.
That's his bread and butter. And so what had happened was we knew that that was going to happen. So as we looked at during the campaign, what was the mass deportations that he was talking about? In New Bedford, we kind of like remember very vividly, for those who saw and were present, the Michael Bianco raid, right?
Yep.
On March 6, 2007, it was 6 degrees outside. And we saw, you know, I vividly remember being inside of the police command van and seeing exactly the streets were being blocked by the New Bedford police, and how you could see those white vans with the, you know, all the windows were covered, and we could see people just being escorted into this white bus and then being escorted by the police. So to us, every time we think about mass deportations, my brain is, when our vision goes into what happened in New Bedford during the Michael Bianco raid. So to us, it feels like during that time, we all came together as organizations to help these families. So it's like kind of like have a plan in place, kind of, because of what happened on March 6th. But it's like preparing people for the worst and expecting the best, right?
How, for people who don't know, I think it might be a good thing to talk about just an overview of what the organization does. You do so much, but I think that when people have a perception of what you are as an organization. But just kind of give an overview, a quick overview of what the organization is as we start the conversation and talk about what you're looking to do.
Yeah, so the Immigrants Assistance Center has been around since November of 1971. We've been located in the space we're at 58 Crapo Street since 1976. So just before COVID, we took over the whole second floor of the 58 Crapo Street. And the organization has always been a place where immigrants would come to provide, we kind of guide them. We're like the beacon of hope to give to immigrants, to our immigrant population.
It's funny, I joke, I call it the 411 for immigrants.
Yeah.
It really is.
It's
for
true.
Anything.
Anything and everything. Anything.
When we call information, not that we do that anymore, but you call information, that's what you get. But that's really, you're the 411 center for immigrants.
Exactly. I think that's a great way of putting it. So they come in for anything and everything, right? So we have a pretty large, we have this project called the Amigos Project, which is at New Bedford High School and at Roosevelt. And what we do is we help kids, unaccompanied youth, many of them, to with immigration and help them really navigate the school system, work very closely with their counselors. So that project, the Amigos Project, has been at New Bedford High School since 2008. So that's our immigrant youth program. And then we have, of course, our citizenship program, which is huge. So we help people become citizens. We do the interviews, we prepare them in the classroom to learn the language, and we help them with the application process, and every 3 times a year, we have a citizenship ceremony.
Yeah, you just had one in December.
That's right, that's right.
Which was
powerful.
A lot of people. And what a nice Christmas gift when you really think about it.
Yeah, and just before, you know, right after the elections, I think we needed something really positive, and I think having the citizenship ceremony at the Immigrants Assistance Center, we had 25 people from 15 different countries get sworn in. So to us, and then we registered them to vote. So to us, I think that's, to me, I think it's probably one of the most powerful programs that we've had, and it always brings me back every time we have these citizenship ceremonies. It always brings me back to when I became a naturalized citizen in 1980. So that's a really powerful program that we have. We also have a lot of elders, right? So we have a pretty large Portuguese elders that have been here for many, many years. Many of them they worked in textile, and many of them are U.S. citizens, and so we help them. We have shine counselors. We help them navigate through health insurances. We help them with apply for certain benefits. We do a lot of assessment on what their needs are. We work very closely with PACE and housing and all the really other organizations. So we do that quite a bit, and then we just have people coming in and just asking immigration, right? A lot of information about what is it that I can do to become a legal resident? What is it that, what is it that's going to happen now under this administration? So what happens is there is a population in our city that we call it mixed immigration, right? When I say mixed immigration, I mean like maybe mom and dad might have no status, and the children are born in the United States. So you have that population that is mixed.
Right.
And there's quite a few in our city, not just in our city, in Bristol County, in the whole United States.
Right, and your range, if you will, for the Immigrants Assistance Center is huge. You're dealing with a lot of people area-wise.
That's right. And we get calls sometimes from different states, and unfortunately, sometimes people are calling us because they become victims of scams, right? So I think what happens is, even before the elections, people were so anxious to get their papers, right? And many of them, there's no way for them to become legal, right? To get legalized their status. So what happens is people very easily rely, if they go on Facebook or they go on social media, and many times they end up getting lawyers who are lawyers, but they're not immigration experts or don't know anything about immigration, and these people become very easy victims of scams. So we're always, unfortunately, we get quite a few of those calls.
And that's where going back to the 411 of information, you know the attorneys that deal with that stuff. If they go to you first, who can I go see? And then you refer them to Attorney X.
Exactly. So I want to say 2014, the Immigrants Assistance Center became accredited by the Board of Immigration Appeals, and which means the center is recognized, which means it's got a stamp of approval by immigration that we are an organization that is accredited, right? So I'm an accredited representative. We have Ana Arias, who's also an accredited representative, which means we can provide legal immigration services, right? And we work very closely, for example, with Catholic Charities, South Coastal Legal Services, and so with Greater Boston Legal Services. So we have a network of attorneys that we can refer, and some local attorneys also that we work with, that we know are immigration experts who are going to tell them, yes, we can help you, no, we cannot help you, and they're not going to take your money and make false promises. So that's really important, especially when you deal with immigration, that you are working with a group of attorneys that there's a lot of trust.
How is it supposed to work? How is the way the laws are right now, without what the president's doing, how is immigration supposed to work for any Joe or Joanne or whatever you want to call it, any person who wants to come into this country?
So I can use myself as an example, right? So my dad, his sister, who was living in Madeira, right? She met her husband, who happened to be a U.S. citizen. They were young, right? And his parents were Madeirans, and he was born in the United States, and they just moved to Madeira during the recession. So he ended up meeting my aunt, and my aunt got married. They lived in Madeira for 3 years, and then my aunt came to the U.S., and then she became a citizen, and she petitioned for my dad, right? So then when she petitioned for my dad, I want to say it took him about 1.5 years for him, after doing query checks, doing vaccines, doing physical stuff. All of that was done in Portugal. Then he came into the United States and he got his green card. As soon as you got in Boston, you got your green card, right? So then he worked at Chamberlain. I think he got here on a Saturday and started working on Monday at Chamberlain, because you have to have a job. At that time, in order to come in, part of the petition was a job. So my dad started working right away.
Your family didn't come?
No,
it's just your
he
dad.
came alone. He came alone because he needed to work and make money so he could petition for his family. So he was here for about 1.5 years. And in 1971, on January 24th, 1971, my mom and my 6 siblings, 7 including me, came to the United States, and we got green cards. But we had to go through a process in the country, again, vaccines, physicals, and that's how we arrived and that's how That's how we came, and that's how a lot of the immigrant population in our area came that way, right?
And you weren't automatically citizens either.
No, no.
So you had to go, as you said, go to class and what have you, to assimilate yourself to become, or to take the test, I would assume.
Exactly. So then what had happened was, after 5 years of being in the United States, my mom went to classes, went to school, and within 5 years, my mother applied for citizenship, because you can apply within 5 years. And of course, she took the test in English, written test and all that. Then she became a citizen. What was interesting is we were all children when she became a citizen, which we could have automatically become citizens ourselves. But no one at immigration told my mom that all she needed to do is fill out paperwork. Nobody told her that. So you know what happened? We all grew up and had to do the process ourselves. Like myself, I became a citizen in 1980 when I was 20. So I had to go through the whole process of submitting the application. And now I think the fee is like $627 or something, $725 now when you submit the application. So that was the process that a lot of people were coming in. And so that process right now, I would say it's taken 8 to 10 years.
Wow. There's that big a backlog. But do those people have the sponsorship, or as your aunt was for your dad?
Yes, you have to have a sponsorship.
Right,
You
but
cannot come.
even if you have the sponsorship, it's 8 to 10 years.
It's taken like that. So for example, we have a population, and I'm just going to use Portuguese, Cape Verdeans, or other ethnic groups that are that have petitioned for their siblings. Like my mom petitioned for her, my father petitioned for my mom, and all the petition. And right now, a U.S. citizen's brother, to petition for, let's say, a sister in Portugal, for example, it's taken between 8, 9, 10, 11 years. So it's a long, so there's a huge backlog.
What about the asylum seekers, which is different?
Yes.
But those are, I guess, for lack of a better word, an emergency situation when you think about it.
Yeah, so an asylum seeker, so for example, somebody's coming, so when the process has changed tremendously, but there used to be a process that as you're coming through the border, you would go through, they call it a credible fear test, right? And if you met that criteria, then you would go into the next, which is the refugee resettlement. And then from there on, you would, they would reach out to your sponsor or to somebody that you
Still have to have a sponsor.
A lot of times they come in, a lot of times they're coming in with a name right now. Because we're talking about, right now I'm talking about people who are coming through the border, right? So a lot of and I can tell you what we're doing, like with the unaccompanied youth. I'm just going to speak about the unaccompanied youth. So when I'm talking about the unaccompanied, we're talking about sometimes 12, 13-year-old kids that are coming through the border. They get to the border, they might have been abandoned by a parent, right? So if they, again, so if they've been abandoned by the parent, they go to Office for Refugee, they go to this resettlement agencies. And then from then on, many times they have a number with them. They may have somebody that they might know, like for example, they might have an uncle, they might have a friend. And once that refugee resettlement, what they'll do is they'll reach out to that sponsor, and that sponsor will buy a flight for them to come and be reunited here. And that's the unaccompanied youth that we do a lot of work at New Bedford High School. So it becomes very challenging because a lot of times the sponsor is not like the sponsor like I just explained with my dad. It's very different because these are people that are coming through the border of Mexico.
A couple of other things. We're talking to Helena DeSilva Hughes from the Immigrants Assistance Center just about what's going on right now. The other thing too is you have those that have workers permits. They're just green cards. That's what they do.
Yeah.
You also have students.
That's right.
Kids, I don't want to say kids because they could be adults too, on student visas coming in.
That's right. That's right.
So there's different ways, I guess, what I'm saying, obviously, for somebody to enter the country.
That's right.
All of those, whether you have the card, whether you're a student, you still have to go through criteria to get in.
Yeah, so then there's different immigration reliefs. There's a temporary protective status, which is TPS. Now Haiti is one of the countries, El Salvador, Honduras. So a lot of Central American countries have this temporary protective status because of the countries being in turmoil. So that's only like sometimes 15 months, and then they have to renew it again. And when they apply for that, they get a worker's permit. So that's how they get it. So it's a whole new, so immigration is pretty confusing. So that's that temporary protective status because your country is in turmoil. So United States will grant them permission to be in the United States, and they'll grant them a temporary working card.
You have businesses though that are looking for workers.
Absolutely.
That are that are, I don't know if they technically are the sponsors, but they're the ones that are saying, hey, we'll take person X, come on in because we need
They need
workers.
Yeah, I think, you know what I find it ironic is that during COVID, where everything was shut down and people were working from home, these were the frontline workers. These were the CNAs, these were the PCAs, these are the people that are working in restaurants, these are the people working in restaurants. So during COVID, we kind of hailed them as heroes, our frontline workers, and now this is the people that we really want. We don't really want them here because they're undocumented. So it's kind of a catch-22, and it is, they are working. And my experience working at the Immigrants Assistance Center with this population is they're very peaceful. They just want to, they only come here to work. That was the only goal they're here. And to give their children a better life.
And students the same way. They're just trying to get education to,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not necessarily they'll stay here. Chances are they'll probably try, but
if there's no path for legalization, and I think what's happening with this administration, it's just making it very difficult because they're going to do away with all these TPSs and asylum, all of those immigration reliefs that were in place. We've been told, you know, I mean, he's mentioned including DACA, right?
Right.
The DACA is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. Was when President Obama got elected. He actually, the first term, he deported more people than any president in the United States. That's why people don't talk about it. And so after he did that, he basically, for the first 4 years of his term, he decided that what he wanted to do, he wanted to show the Republicans that he was hard on he was going to protect the borders and was going to deport people, which he did. What happened is because he thought on his second term that he had appealed to the Republicans that he would eventually pass an immigration reform bill. So when he noticed on the second term that he wasn't going to pass an immigration reform bill, that's when he passed DACA,
right,
which he did not want the United States to deport students. And that's the order that you keep, right, you can't apply no new applicants, but if you had DACA, you can keep renewing it. And that's one of the things he's also said he's going to be doing. And the reason why President Obama passed that was because he did not want to deport students.
And colleges are obviously advocating for foreign students as well. I mean,
Yeah.
they want those students coming in.
This is the labor force.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, got a few minutes, 10 minutes or so to go here. One of the things, you talked about it, too, the sanctuary locations now. There are no sanctuary
That's
locations,
right,
according to this. It used to be schools, churches.
and health centers and hospitals.
But President Trump has said we can go in anytime, anywhere.
Yeah, and that's very scary because in 2017, then these were the areas where we knew that there was safe, right, and there was sanctuary. Now there's no sanctuary. And then I was watching last night, I think, something about Worcester and then the schools, right, because now they're telling the schools need to protect the kids. They go on the bus and what's going to happen to them. So yeah, there's no sanctuaries places anymore.
But the other argument too, when you really say it, when you really think about it, really simply is this is what the American people want.
Yeah,
The
they
voters
voted
want
for
it.
him.
This is
Yeah.
what the voters want.
Okay.
They want a complete crackdown. Fair, unfair, that's not the issue. This is what the people want, and this is what the president said he's going to deliver.
Yeah, and that's a promise he made during his campaign, right? So that's something he said, he promised. And I have to say that, when we talk about an immigration reform, we've been talking about, I've been talking about an immigration reform for the past 30 years, right? And we have seen both the Democrats and Republicans utilize immigration reform as a political football during elections, and then they get elected and nothing passes, right? So this system is totally broken. And of course, under Biden administration, we saw what was happening. And I think people saw the image of people just coming in through the border and not being inspected, right? We saw that constantly. And that's the visual that we kept seeing in the news, right? So I think that visual and the fact that people were coming through the border without inspection really got to people. And I'd say that I would say that under his administration, that I think they will definitely go after people who have criminal records. I think we all agree. We do not want people in this country that have criminal records.
Right.
We absolutely 100% agree with that. So I think those are the first people that he said he was going to deport was criminals. I think the second phase that he will do is, I think he'll most likely will just go after people who maybe, anybody who's here undocumented. I think he's going to look, or people that have an order to deport. In other words, they might have gotten an order to leave and they didn't leave. So I think that I'd say that those are the low-hanging fruits that he'll do first, the criminals. I think the ones with deportation orders, and then I think eventually he will go and deport other people who don't have status. But what I do believe is, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I do believe that at the end of his term, we will have an immigration reform bill.
Well, but I know President Bush, second President Bush, had an agreement in place.
That's right.
That didn't get voted on. Senator Kennedy, Senator McCain were key players
Huge.
in that. President Biden had one that he was ready to sign, that Senator Lankford in Oklahoma, the Republican, worked on, because that's what the Republicans wanted, and nothing came about. Matter of fact, Senator Lankford got criticized. More than criticized, by his own party, but that's what the party wanted him to do.
Yeah, and that's what happened. Even back when you mentioned President Bush, I remember going to D.C. and speaking to our legislators, and I remember vividly that an immigration reform had 3 components that we had all agreed, right? And which basically was the 3 components was, first of all, you'd have to come forward and go through a criminal background check. Secondly, they'd have to pay taxes. That's why it became really important for people to get a tax ID so they can pay taxes. And third, they had to learn how to speak English. Those were 3 components of an immigration reform bill that President Bush said he would sign, right? It passed in the Senate. It didn't pass in the House. And the Democrats control the House. So, as you can see, it's both parties are to blame.
Yeah. So we talk about the sanctuary things. I know the state attorneys generals, there were 22 of them, the last count that I saw the other night, that have moved to appeal Trump's move to end the immigration policy known as birthright citizenship. That's going to be a tougher sell just because it's ingrained in the Constitution.
That's right. I think that is, I don't know how he's going to do that, but it is something that it's one of those executive orders that he signed right away. I think was the day he got sworn in, he was signing all those executive orders, and that is one of them. I think it's going to be really tough. I know the ACLU is already, is already suing on that one. So I don't know what's going to happen to the birthright to citizenship.
But right now, nothing happens.
That's right. Nothing happens.
Right now, child born
everything's in the U.S. A child born to undocumented parents in the U.S., that child is a U.S. born.
Although I know that the president's border czar, whose name escapes me off the top of my head right now, has said that the parents, if parents are rounded up and the kids are legal, they're not going to separate the families, but you have 2 options. You can leave the kid here, but you're going no matter what, or you can take the kid with you.
That's why these emergency family preparedness that we are working, basically the team in the office, under Annie Ulrich, who's the executive director now, under the team, they have been doing a lot of work with New Bedford Public Schools, with the service providers to really train the trainers to really make sure that these families have a plan. And I've been actually doing the emergency family preparedness through the ethnic media, right, radio and television. And the emergency family preparedness is exactly that. The emergency family preparedness is a plan that if parents get picked up by immigration, there'll be a plan so that children can be reunited with them. I have never met a mother that says, I want to leave my children behind. Never. They all want their children to go with them. So this emergency family preparedness plan is in case parents get deported, they'll have someone in charge that will be able to have the children reunited. And the plan is basically and I'm just going to go a little bit over the plan because this plan is something we do. We did it in 2017, and it's basically saying it's an affidavit. So if I'm, for example, undocumented and you're a very dear friend of mine and you're a U.S. citizen, this affidavit is basically you're going to need to sign it, and I'm going to sign it, and you're basically saying if I get picked up by immigration, you can pick my children up. A copy of that affidavit goes to the school, one goes to the doctors, and you will be able to pick up my child from school and bring them to the doctors if needed, and bring it to the school, and eventually you will be responsible.
So you're a guardian in a sense.
Exactly, guardian, temporary guardian. Until if I get to put it, then that's where you're going. So these emergency family preparedness, and at the same time, if these children are born in the United States, it's important to get the children passports.
Is it fair to tell those that are undocumented right now, listen, I'd have a plan if you're, because chances are you might be, chances are pretty good you're going to go.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. This is what the voters want.
Yeah.
And you're undocumented, and I'm sorry, but this is it.
Well, I think this is a very hard conversation to have with the families, right? But it's a conversation that we prepare for everything, and like we prepare for our future. We prepare. So this is a preparedness. Hopefully, what we say is hopefully we are preparing for the worst, expecting the best, right? Hopefully you will not be able to use it. You'll not use it, but at least you will have a plan in place, because if you don't have and your parents get deported, the state can take over the children. So it's just a plan to make sure that the children are reunited with their parents.
Right. We got 2 minutes left, but I want to give you a chance to just, again, give people the info if they need to get in touch with you or the staff, whatever. I'm sure, like I said, you have tons of questions, and it's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. I think that we have such a strong team at the Immigrants Assistance Center. We're all born outside the United States. We have people who speak Spanish. We have Creole. We have about 7 languages that we've spoken fluently. None of us were born in the U.S., so it's really important that we represent the population that we serve. Please, we're open from 8 to 5, Monday through Thursday, and I think that just reach out to the Immigrants Assistance Center. Our phone number is 508-9968-113. You can always look at our website.
The website's very helpful.
Yeah,
there's a lot of information on it.
Information, our Facebook, Instagram. We are very much, Jen Lopes has done an amazing job in our media, in social media, and so we're very fortunate we have such a strong team at the center, and we're just there to help and see how we can help these families. It's a very chaotic time right now, and there's a lot of fear and anxiety, and we're just trying to help these families stay together.
It's good seeing you.
It was wonderful.
Thanks for coming in.
Anytime.
That's going to do it for this edition of A Conversation With. I'm Jim Marshall, the New Bedford Cable Network. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon.